The dim hum of the station's environmental controls filled the room as Dr. Adrian Morse prepared his notes. His desk was strewn with data pads, holographic displays, and an assortment of artifacts from Earth objects carefully selected for their cultural significance. It wasn't every day humanity had the chance to engage in an exchange with a species as complex and secretive as the Zinvari. Dr. Morse. A voice called from the open door. Adrian turned to see Marcus Ewing, one of his closest colleagues and an old friend from the early days of the Human Interstellar Outreach Program. Marcus stepped into the room, his dark eyes scanning the clutter. "You really went all out, didn't you?" Adrian grinned. "It's not every day you meet a species that's had zero contact with humans before. I want to make a good impression." Marcus picked up a small brass sextant from the table, turning it over in his hands. "You think they'll care about an old Earth navigational tool?" "It's not about the tool itself," Adrian replied, leaning back in his chair. "It's about what it represents, our history, the way we used to explore before we even knew there were other stars out there. I want them to see that humanity has a story worth sharing." Marcus gave a short laugh. "And here I thought I was the idealist in the room. Fine. I'll help you arrange the stuff before they arrive. When do they get here?" "Soon." "Very soon," Adrian said, glancing at the chronometer. "Let's make sure we have everything ready." The two men worked side by side, arranging the artifacts on the display tables, syncing the holographic projectors, and adjusting the room's ambient lighting to create a welcoming atmosphere. As they worked, Adrian found himself reflecting on how far they'd come. Marcus had been there when Adrian had first proposed the cultural exchange program, back when humanity was still learning how to navigate the complex web of interstellar diplomacy. They had both fought for the idea that understanding each other's cultures could prevent misunderstandings that often led to conflict. Today was the culmination of years of effort. Once everything was in place, they stood back to admire their handiwork. The room now resembled a small museum exhibit, with each artifact highlighted by soft, warm light. The holographic displays floated gracefully above the tables, showcasing key moments in Earth's history, art, and philosophy. "Looks good," Marcus said, folding his arms. "You ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Adrian replied. He looked at his friend, grateful for his steady presence. "Thanks for sticking with me on this. It means a lot." "Hey, if this works, we'll both have a place in the history books," Marcus said with a smirk. "Though, I have to admit, I'm curious to see how they'll react. The Zinvari are nothing like any species we've encountered before. They're known for their intellectual rigor and deep traditions," Adrian said. "I just hope we can find some common ground." The sound of the station's door chime interrupted their conversation. Adrian's heart leapt. This was it. The door slid open, and in stepped the Zinvari envoy and her attendants. Zari, the lead envoy, stood at the forefront. She was tall and lithe, her skin a pale blue that seemed to shimmer under the station's artificial lights. Her eyes, large and luminous, scanned the room with a sharp, calculating gaze. Behind her were two other Zinvari, dressed in flowing garments adorned with intricate patterns that appeared to shift and move as they walked. "Welcome," Adrian said, stepping forward. He extended his hand in a traditional Earth greeting, then quickly remembered the Zinvari didn't engage in casual physical contact. He withdrew his hand, hoping the gesture wouldn't be taken as a slight. "We're honored to have you here." Zari inclined her head slightly. "Dr. Morse. I am Zari, envoy of the Zinvari Assembly. We have looked forward to this meeting." Adrian glanced at Marcus, who gave him a reassuring nod. "Please come in," Adrian said. "We've prepared a collection of artifacts and cultural highlights to share with you." Zari and her attendants moved into the room, their steps graceful and deliberate. As they approached the first table, Zari's gaze fell on the brass sextant. She studied it intently, her long, slender fingers hovering above it without touching. "This device," she said, her voice melodic and precise. "What is its purpose?" Adrian stepped beside her. "It's an ancient navigation tool from Earth's seafaring days. Sailors used it to measure the angle between celestial objects, like stars, and the horizon to determine their position at sea." Zari tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. "You mean to say that before you traveled the stars, your people relied on the stars to guide them across the oceans?" "That's right," Adrian said, smiling. "It's a testament to how we've always looked upward, seeking new horizons. Each step forward builds on what we've learned in the past." Zari's lips curved into what might have been a faint smile. "Fascinating. Your species has a deep connection to exploration." "That's one way to put it," Marcus interjected, stepping forward. "We've always been a bit restless, I suppose. Never content to stay in one place for long." Zari turned her gaze to Marcus. "And you are?" "Marcus Ewing," he said with a slight bow. "I'm Adrian's colleague and partner on this project. I've been helping him prepare for this meeting. Zari regarded him for a moment before nodding. It is good to meet you, Marcus Ewing. Marcus exchanged a glance with Adrian, a hint of a grin on his face. You know, Adrian, I think they like our little museum here. Let's hope so, Adrian said. Zari, there's much more to see. Over here, we have a display on Earth's artistic traditions. As the meeting progressed, Adrian and Marcus worked as a team, guiding the Zinvari through the various exhibits. They answered questions, explained the significance of each artifact, and engaged in increasingly spirited discussions about philosophy, history, and even the nature of human emotions. Zari proved to be an attentive listener and a skilled conversationalist, her questions probing yet respectful. At one point, Marcus decided to introduce a piece of Earth music. He activated a small device that played a classical symphony. The Zinvari tilted their heads, their expressions curious. Zari's eyes seemed to brighten as the music swelled. This is unexpected, she said after a moment. The sound conveys a depth of emotion I did not anticipate. That's the beauty of music, Marcus said. It's a language of its own. You don't need to know the words to feel what it's saying. Zari nodded slowly, her gaze unfocused as if she were absorbing the melody on a level beyond mere hearing. Adrian couldn't help but marvel at the moment. The two species, so different in form and culture, were finding a common thread in the universal language of art. By the end of the day, the room felt less like a formal meeting space and more like a shared ground of mutual discovery. Adrian and Marcus had worked seamlessly together, blending their knowledge and skills to make the Zinvari feel welcome. And Zari, with her sharp mind and genuine curiosity, had begun to show glimpses of the person behind the envoy, someone who, despite the many differences between their species, seemed to understand the value of connection. As the Zinvari prepared to leave, Zari turned to Adrian and Marcus. This has been a most enlightening experience, she said. I thank you both for your efforts. I look forward to our continued exchanges. The pleasure was ours, Adrian said, offering her a warm smile. We're just getting started. Adrian rubbed the back of his neck, staring at the holographic display of the Zinvari homeworld. The swirling azure clouds and ribbons of green that snaked across the surface made it look almost otherworldly, despite the fact that it was just another planet, orbiting another star, like so many others. It still amazed him how different and yet how similar life could be across the galaxy. Still staring at the holo? Marcus leaned on the edge of the console, arms crossed. You're going to burn it into your retinas at this rate. Adrian laughed lightly. It's not every day you get to study a planet like this up close. Did you know their atmospheric composition produces constant auroras at the poles? It's like their whole world is alive with color. Marcus shrugged. Sure. And while you're busy marveling at the light show, I'm wondering what kind of food they eat. You think they'd be willing to trade some recipes? I'm pretty sure interspecies diplomacy doesn't start with a cook-off, Adrian replied, though his grin was genuine. Still, you've got a point. It's the small things, food, art, music, that really show who a people are. Speaking of small things, Marcus said, nodding toward the entrance. I think our esteemed envoy is here to see you again. Adrian turned just in time to see Zari enter the observation room. She moved with a grace that was both regal and deliberate, her pale blue skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Her eyes, those luminous, reflective eyes, immediately found his. Dr. Morse. Mr. Ewing. Zari gave a polite bow, her tone as measured as ever. I trust I'm not intruding? Not at all, Adrian said quickly. You're always welcome. What brings you here? Zari glanced toward the holographic planet. I was curious to see how you interpret our world. This display is surprisingly accurate. We've been studying the data you provided, Adrian explained. But it's one thing to look at images and another to hear about it firsthand. What's it really like? Living there. Zari stepped closer to the display, her gaze lingering on the swirling patterns. To me, it is simply home. The shifting colors, the constant hum of the atmosphere, the bioluminescent seas. All of it is as natural to us as the sun and moon are to you. Yet, I understand that for you, it must seem almost fantastical. It's beautiful, Marcus chimed in, his voice sincere. But what's it like living under all that? Do you get used to it? Or is it something you never stop noticing? Zari turned her head slightly, considering his words. Perhaps both. As children, we are awed by the vibrancy of our surroundings. As we grow older, we learn to focus less on the surface and more on the subtleties, the ways the light changes with the seasons, the patterns in the auroras that predict the weather, the rhythms of the sea creatures that guide our migrations. It becomes a second language, one we don't speak but simply know. Sounds a lot more poetic than growing up under smog and skyscrapers, Marcus muttered. Adrian chuckled. Some places on Earth are still breathtaking. You should see the view from the Andes at sunrise, or the way the northern lights dance over the Arctic. I think, in the end, we're not so different. We both learn to appreciate the natural beauty around us. Perhaps, Zari said, her expression thoughtful. She looked back at Adrian. You mentioned something yesterday, the idea that touch conveys meaning in your culture. I've been thinking about that. Adrian exchanged a brief glance with Marcus, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing. What about it? Adrian asked. In Zinvari tradition, touch is rare and formal, Zari explained. It is reserved for moments of great significance, a gesture of trust, of commitment. Yet, from what I have observed and read, your people often touch without such formality. I find that fascinating. What does a simple touch mean to you? That depends on the context, Adrian said after a moment. A handshake can mean an introduction. A pat on the shoulder can be encouragement. A hug can be comfort. Touch isn't just one thing. It's a way of communicating without words. Zari tilted her head, her expression unreadable. And how do you know when a touch is meaningful, rather than frivolous? Adrian hesitated. It was a deceptively complex question. I guess it comes down to intent. You can feel it. When someone touches you out of care, or trust, or affection, it carries a weight that you can't fake. Yeah, it's not like we go around hugging random strangers, Marcus added with a wry smile. Most of the time, at least, when it's meaningful, you just know. There's something unspoken about it. Zari considered their words, her hands clasped lightly in front of her. I see. It is a form of expression that transcends language. Exactly, Adrian said, his tone softening. It's a way to connect on a level that words can't always reach. For a moment, Zari's reflective eyes met Adrian's, and he thought he saw a flicker of something beyond mere curiosity. Something more personal, more human. Marcus, sensing the weight of the moment, cleared his throat. Well, if you're looking to learn more about human customs, maybe Adrian can teach you our universal gesture for peace and goodwill. Buying the next round at the bar. Zari turned to him, her head tilting slightly. I am unfamiliar with this tradition. Buying a round. Adrian stifled a laugh. It's just a joke. But Marcus does have a point. If you really want to understand humans, you have to experience the social side of things. And what does that entail? Zari asked. It depends, Marcus said. Sometimes it's sharing a meal, sometimes it's swapping stories, sometimes it's just spending time together. Like now. Zari regarded them both for a moment before nodding. Then perhaps we should continue this discussion over one of your human meals. I would like to understand more. Adrian and Marcus exchanged surprised glances. It wasn't often that a Zinvari suggested something so informal. I'd like that, Adrian said, his voice warm. Sure, Marcus added. We can introduce you to some Earth classics. I promise not to burn anything this time. As they made their way toward the station's dining quarters, Adrian felt a sense of anticipation. The Zinvari had always seemed distant, their motives inscrutable. But now, walking beside Zari, he realized that understanding wasn't just about knowledge or facts. It was about sharing experiences, seeing the world through each other's eyes. And in that moment, the gulf between their species felt just a little bit smaller. Adrian and Marcus sat on the bench, quietly watching Zari examine the holographic projection of an ancient Earth sculpture. Her fingers hovered just above the light, tracing the intricate contours. It was one of the few moments of stillness after hours of non-stop dialogue and demonstrations. You know, Marcus said, breaking the silence, for someone who claims not to understand humans, she's got the curiosity part down. Adrian chuckled. I think that's why she's here. They didn't send a scientist or a politician. They sent someone who asks questions, someone who really wants to know us. And who we want to know back, Marcus added. He watched Zari closely, the faint shimmer of her pale blue skin catching the light as she tilted her head to view the sculpture from another angle. You've been spending a lot of time with her, Adrian. Just doing my job, Adrian said with a small smile. Yeah, right, Marcus replied, smirking. You've always been a better liar in front of a podium than in front of me. Before Adrian could respond, Zari straightened and turned to face them. This piece, she began, gesturing toward the projection. It was created by humans centuries ago, yet it still resonates. Why is that? It's art, Adrian said. It doesn't have to explain itself. It just speaks to something universal. Zari looked thoughtful. Universal. Interesting. Among my people, art is often functional. It serves a purpose, a tool of communication, or a medium for recording knowledge. But your art seems to be its own purpose. It exists simply to exist. Exactly, Marcus said. Sometimes it's just about capturing a feeling or a moment. Doesn't need to do anything else. Zari studied the projection a moment longer before nodding. I see. There is value in that. Even if it is not necessary. Adrian rose and moved to stand beside her. Sometimes the most meaningful things aren't about survival or utility. They're about connection, about understanding each other in a way that goes beyond words. Her reflective eyes met his. I'm beginning to understand. I think. Good, Marcus said, stretching. Because if you don't get art, I don't know how you'll survive our food. Zari tilted her head. Food? Come on, Marcus said with a grin, heading for the door. We've got a dish that's practically a masterpiece. Adrian, care to do the honors? Adrian sighed, following him. You're setting her up for disappointment, you know that? We'll see, Marcus replied over his shoulder. Besides, I'm curious how she'll react. The three of them ended up in one of the station's small kitchens where Marcus had insisted on preparing an old Earth favorite, pizza. He claimed it was the perfect blend of artistry and comfort food, and after some back and forth about whether Zari's physiology could handle the cheese and spices, they settled on a simple margarita-style recipe. Marcus worked with exaggerated showmanship, tossing the dough into the air poorly and layering on the toppings. Adrian mostly cleaned up after him, muttering under his breath about how this was supposed to be a cultural exchange, not a cooking show. Meanwhile, Zari observed every step with the intensity of someone studying a complex scientific process. The act of preparing food, she said after a while, it's almost ritualistic. You select the ingredients, combine them in a specific order, and then transform them with heat. It's a type of creation, isn't it? Exactly, Marcus said, sliding the pizza into the small oven. Cooking is an art. And eating is an even better one. Adrian chuckled, leaning against the counter. You're not wrong. Some of our most memorable moments happen around meals. It's when we talk, share stories, connect. Zari looked at him, her expression curious. So, a meal is more than sustenance. It's a conduit for connection. Pretty much, Marcus said, checking the oven's progress. You sit down with people, you eat, you talk, and by the end of it you feel closer. Does that apply to all meals? She asked. Not every meal, no, Adrian said. But the ones that matter, the ones you share with people you care about, those are the ones you remember. The smell of baking dough and melting cheese filled the small room. When the pizza was finally ready, Marcus cut it into slices and handed Zari the first piece. She examined it closely, her delicate fingers holding it as if it were some rare artifact. Go on, Marcus encouraged. It's meant to be eaten with your hands. Zari hesitated for a moment, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened slightly and she chewed slowly as if analyzing every flavor. When she swallowed, she looked at Marcus and Adrian. I see the appeal, she said carefully. It's warm. Flavorful. The textures are unexpected but not unpleasant. That's about as high a compliment as we're gonna get, Marcus said with a grin, taking a slice for himself. The three of them ate in comfortable silence for a while. Zari's initial cautious bites grew more confident, and by the time they finished, she had tried a little of everything Marcus had prepared. This was a unique experience, Zari said as they cleaned up. Thank you for sharing it with me. Anytime, Marcus said, giving Adrian a knowing look. But next time it's a connection, then perhaps it would be worthwhile for you to practice it. Wow, Marcus said, grinning. She's already picking up the human art of sarcasm. Adrian shook his head, but he couldn't hide his smile. Later, as they walked back to the main conference room, Zari fell into step beside Adrian. Marcus was a few paces ahead, chatting casually with one of the station's technicians. Adrian, Zari said quietly, I wanted to ask you something. Of course, he replied, his tone softening. Earlier, you mentioned that meals are a way of forming connections. But what if the connection already exists? How do humans deepen it? He slowed his pace, sensing the weight behind her words. There are a lot of ways, he said carefully. Spending time together, sharing experiences. Sometimes it's just about being present, really listening to each other. And, well, sometimes it's physical. Physical, she repeated, her gaze steady. Not just touch, but gestures that show you care. A hand on someone's shoulder when they're upset. A hug when they're happy. And yes, sometimes a kiss. Her expression didn't waver, but he noticed her fingers twitch slightly. A kiss. You mentioned that before. Is it truly so significant? It can be, he admitted. But only if it means something. It's not the act itself, it's what it represents. Trust. Affection. Understanding. She nodded slowly, her luminous eyes reflecting the station's faint lights. Thank you for explaining. He smiled. Anytime. As they continued walking, Adrian couldn't help but wonder what she was really thinking and whether the connection they were building was as unique to her as it was to him. The station's observation deck was quiet, its curved glass walls offering a panoramic view of the stars. Adrian stood at the railing, hands in his pockets, staring out at the endless sea of pinpricks in the void. He felt Marcus approach before he saw him, the sound of boots on the metal floor a familiar rhythm. Thought I'd find you here, Marcus said, stopping a few feet away. You always come here when something's on your mind. Adrian glanced over, giving a faint smile. Just thinking. About her. Adrian hesitated before nodding. Yeah. Marcus leaned against the railing, arms folded. It's getting pretty obvious, you know. The way you look at her, the way she looks at you. I can practically see the sparks flying. Adrian sighed. It's complicated. She's not just anyone. She's Zinvari. This whole exchange is supposed to be professional. Yeah, well, sometimes life doesn't follow the script. Marcus nudged him lightly. What's the worst that could happen? You might actually be happy for once. Adrian gave him a wry look. You're not exactly known for subtlety, are you? Nope, Marcus said with a grin. But seriously, Adrian, if she feels something, why not talk to her about it? Before Adrian could respond, the door to the observation deck opened. Both men turned as Zari entered, her movements graceful, her expression calm. She stopped a few paces from them, her hands clasped lightly in front of her. Am I interrupting? She asked, her voice as melodic as ever. Not at all, Marcus said, straightening. I was just telling Adrian to stop overthinking everything. Adrian shot him a look, but Marcus only winked. Zari stepped closer, her gaze fixed on Adrian. There is something I wish to discuss with you. Alone, if possible. Marcus raised his hands. Say no more. I'll leave you two to it. With that, he walked out, leaving the door to slide shut behind him. Adrian turned back to Zari. What's on your mind? She paused for a moment, her eyes searching his face. I have been reflecting on our conversations. On what you've said about touch and about the ways humans express connection. And, he prompted gently. I believe I understand now, she said. At least, I think I do. Among my people, physical gestures carry great significance. A touch can convey trust, respect, or even affection. But they are rare and often formalized. For you, it seems more spontaneous. Natural. It can be, Adrian said. But that doesn't mean it's less meaningful. Sometimes it's the little things, a hand on your shoulder when you're upset, a hug when you're happy, that mean the most. Zari took a step closer, her gaze steady. You said that a kiss is a gesture of trust and affection. He felt his heart rate increase. Yes, it can be. She tilted her head slightly, a habit he had come to find endearing. If you would permit me, I would like to try it. With you. Adrian blinked, caught off guard. You mean, you want to kiss me? I have considered it carefully, she said. It is not a decision I make lightly. But I believe it would help me understand not just the act, but the emotion behind it. His mind raced. This wasn't just about cultural curiosity anymore. He could see it in her eyes, this was personal. Are you sure? He asked. Zari nodded. Yes. If you were willing. Adrian took a deep breath, then stepped closer. He reached out, brushing a strand of her silver-white hair away from her face. Her skin was cool under his fingertips and her expression remained calm, though her eyes seemed to deepen in intensity. Slowly he leaned in, his heart pounding. When their lips met, it was soft, tentative. For a moment, the entire universe seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the quiet hum of the station. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it didn't need to be. The meaning was in the simplicity, in the shared moment. When they parted, Zari looked at him with a newfound understanding. I see, she said softly. It is more than I imagined. More profound. Adrian smiled, still feeling the warmth of the moment. It's not just the kiss. It's about the connection behind it. She nodded. Thank you for sharing this with me. You're welcome, he said. For a while, they simply stood there, the stars outside a silent witness to their quiet exchange. Adrian wasn't sure what would come next, but for now he was content to let the moment linger. Adrian paced the room, trying to sort through the jumble of emotions running through his mind. It had been a few days since that moment with Zari, and he still couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental between them had changed. She'd returned to her duties as if nothing had happened, but Adrian found it increasingly difficult to focus. He replayed their kiss over and over, wondering if it had meant as much to her as it had to him. "You look like you've been up all night," Marcus said as he strolled into the room, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. He plopped down in one of the chairs, stretching his legs out in front of him. "You're not still agonizing over that kiss, are you?" Adrian stopped pacing, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know if agonizing is the right word. I'm just processing." Marcus took a sip of his coffee, raising an eyebrow. "Processing, huh? Sounds like code for I can't stop thinking about her." Adrian gave him a pointed look. "It's not that simple, Marcus. She's Zinvari. Her entire culture views touch differently than we do. What if I'm reading too much into it?" "Well, there's one surefire way to find out," Marcus said, leaning forward. "You talk to her. Ask her how she feels." "I know, radical concept." Adrian groaned, sitting down heavily on the couch. "You make it sound so easy." "Because it is," Marcus replied. "You've been working side by side with her for weeks. You already have a connection. Just be honest." Before Adrian could respond, the door chimed. He straightened as it slid open, revealing Zari. She stepped inside, her expression as calm and composed as ever. "Am I interrupting?" she asked. "Not at all," Marcus said quickly, standing up. "I'll let you two talk." Adrian shot Marcus a look, but his friend just grinned and exited the room, leaving Adrian and Zari alone. She stepped closer, her gaze meeting his. "Adrian, I have been reflecting on our recent interaction." His heart skipped a beat. "What about it?" "I have come to realize that the meaning of that moment extends beyond the gesture itself," she said. "In Zinvari tradition, an act of trust or affection is not merely symbolic. It represents a shift in understanding, a recognition of something deeper." Adrian nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've been thinking about it too. And I think it was more than just a cultural exchange." She tilted her head slightly, her reflective eyes fixed on him. "Then we are in agreement." It was significant. There was a pause as they stood there, the air between them heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Adrian took a step closer. "Zari, I don't know exactly what this means for us, but I know that I value the connection we've built. And I think there's potential for something more. If you're open to it." Her gaze softened, and for a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of a smile. "I believe I am." It wasn't a grand declaration, but it didn't need to be. It was a beginning, a mutual understanding that they were stepping into uncharted territory together. Over the next few days, Adrian and Zari continued to work side by side, their interactions taking on a new, quieter intimacy. They still discussed human art and Zinvari poetry, still debated the finer points of philosophy and science, but now there was a sense of ease between them. The occasional brush of hands or a shared glance held more meaning than any of their words. Marcus, of course, noticed the change immediately. "So, you two finally sorted things out, huh?" he asked one evening, leaning against the doorframe of the common room. Adrian looked up from his data pad, smiling faintly. "You could say that." Marcus gave him a knowing nod. "Good. About time." Life aboard the station settled into a new rhythm. Adrian found that his work with Zari became not just a duty, but something he genuinely looked forward to. They made plans to visit the Zinvari homeworld together once the initial exchange program concluded. It would be a chance for Adrian to experience her culture firsthand, and for Zari to share her world with him. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck watching the stars, Zari turned to Adrian. "There is a saying among my people," she said. "It does not translate perfectly, but it means, the first step across the bridge changes the traveler." Adrian thought about that for a moment, then nodded. "I like that. It's true. Once you start, you can't go back to the way things were." She looked at him, her expression serene. "I believe we are both different now, and that is not a bad thing." He reached out, his hand brushing hers lightly. "No, it's not. It's not bad at all." And as they stood there together, the stars stretching endlessly before them, Adrian realized that they had indeed crossed a bridge, and that whatever lay on the other side, they would face it together.